Hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. I see just another person or so logging in, so I just want to make sure that they're in before we begin. Another moment or so. Okay. We have a lot of material to cover in the hour, so I'd like to begin. This is the Report Designer Basic Training Webinar. Today is Wednesday, July 11th, 2018. My name is Eric Johnson, and I will be your Windward training facilitator today. I'm a technical support engineer here at Windward Studios. I've been here for a little over half a year now. Maybe you've interacted with me through help desk tickets. Well, welcome everybody. You may have noticed that when you logged into the GoToMeeting webinar, you have a toolbar. The arrow that you see on your screen here is pointing to the raise your hand icon. So if anytime during the webinar you have a question or are experiencing technical difficulties, please feel free to click that button to ask your question or notify me of anything that's wrong. The prompts I have for questions in chat are on my other screen, so I may not see your question immediately. Usually I wait until the Q&A session at the end to answer questions, but I'll check occasionally in case something is posted. Again, this is a basic introduction to Report Designer. We assume that you haven't used Report Designer. Maybe you've installed it, but you probably haven't built any templates. You don't know too much about the interface or how to add tags to documents. So we'll go over the very basics, the fundamental things to do with Report Designer. Next week, there's an intermediate training webinar scheduled where we'll cover more advanced features. But for today, the machine I'm working on is Windows 10 operating system, which is 64-bit. And I'm also using Office 2016, which is also 64-bit. It's okay to use 32 or 64-bit. We recommend using 64-bit as this allows you to utilize all the memory on your machine when you're building a template and gathering the data, because sometimes you're pulling in a lot of data and that requires a lot of memory. I think 32-bit only allows you 2 gigs of memory, while 64 you can utilize all that you have on your hardware. And the version of Report Designer that I'm using, it's 15.2.331.0. This version was just recently released, and you can find it on our Windward Software Downloads webpage. Okay, I want to give you a high-level overview of what we'll be discussing today. We'll take a look at what's within the Auto Tag and Auto Tag Manager tabs. We'll create a simple template using the ForEach and Alt tags to create a couple of lists. These 2 tags, the ForEach and Alt tags, being the most popular tags that you'll use. We'll go over the input parameters, or what we consider variables, which are used to filter before you generate the output. We'll go over a couple data source wizards, more specifically SQL and XML. We'll cover how to generate and how to get some help. Okay, we're first going to look at what's in the Auto Tag Manager tab. You're not going to access this tab that often. It just kind of gets your environment set up. We'll discuss the data source button, which is what you'll use to connect to your data source. We'll go over the find and replace tool. We'll discuss the about button. We'll look at the license button. So if you're using a temporary key and you want to update it to a permanent key, I'll show you where to do this. And where to get samples and other tutorials after this webinar. So let's go ahead and look at Report Designer. I'm going to open up a blank Word document. It's opening on my other screen. Just open. I'm going to drag it over now. Okay. Okay. So when you install Report Designer, there will be two tabs added to your Word ribbon. This Auto Tag tab and this Auto Tag Manager tab. For right now, let's go ahead and look at this Auto Tag Manager tab. So within this, over here in the data section, this is the data sources button. And this data source button connects you to your data. So if you're using JSON, XML, SQL, or OData, these are the 4 types that we support. This is where you'll set up that connection. To the right is the load and create pods. This is a really great feature that we offer that lets you reuse items that you have created in other templates. So this really helps speed up the development process if there's a lot of things that you reuse over and over again, say a common footer in all your templates. Instead of designing them each and every time and adding them, you can just load the pod, and however you save it, it gets added directly to the document. You can get more information on pods in our wiki. To the right is this Generate Code button, and this is handy for the developer types. It shows you how to generate the code from the template that you're working on for our Windward engines. So if you're using the .NET, Java, or the RESTful engine, it shows you the code and how to reference the template and generate the output. Really handy tool. Next, I'd like to point out, and we're going to move over now to the tool section, is this Find and Replace button. Something that's sometimes overlooked. I just clicked on it, but it opened on my other screen, so let me slide it over. So this is an easy way to update all the tags in your template. So if, for example, you create a data source and you didn't really give it a good descriptive nickname, but you've already come through and set up a bunch of tags in your template, but you want to change that nickname just to make it more user-friendly. So what you could do is you could come into this Find and Replace tool, click on enter in here what you're trying to find, the nickname that you have entered, enter in here the nickname that you want to replace it with, and then you can come down here and choose to select all the tags that you want to change the nickname in, or you may just only want to change it in a couple, maybe the ForEaches and an alt tag that you have in mind. So we give the option to change, you can update within in your template everything or specific tags and also specific properties. Here I was talking about nickname, but you could also change the variables, var status, the var, the variable name, the sort, all different types of options. So this is a really handy tool for after you've created a template and you want to change something within the tag. This gives you the ability to do it in one swift motion. Okay, let's now look into this options section, and I like to point out this about button. So this gives you some information on the version that you're using. So for me, the version of AutoTag that I'm using is 15.2.331.0, and it's a 64-bit word. Here you can see what version your license is good through. For me, my license that I'm using is good through version 16. Also lets you know when your license is set to expire. Mine right here isn't going to expire till next year, July 30th of next year. Another thing this about window shows you is the IP addresses, and that's over here. So when I click this About button up here, this window will show all the users that are using this specific license key at the moment I click the About button. So if you want to see if there's more than one people using your license key, because your license may only be valid for 2 users, mine right here is valid for 50. I'm using a super key, but yours may say 2. And if you're running into license problems, you could click on that About button and see everybody who's using it at that moment. Okay, next I'd like to point out is this license button. So if this is where you will enter your license key. When you receive it in an email, you'll just copy and paste it into this window. But if you are performing a major update, say you're updating from version 14 to 15, you will need to add that 15 key here. So again, you would just copy and Control V paste. Or if you needed to switch your license key from your temporary to your permanent key, you would also do it within this license window. Okay. So today, watching the webinar is the best first step to learning the Report Designer. Second step I'd recommend is going to our Windward tutor, which is here in the Getting Started Guide section. And this Windward tutor will give us step-by-step instructions on how to do something. So once you open it up, here you have some instructions for AutoTag basics, connecting to your data, tag tutorials, AutoTag data tools. Then just go ahead and click on one to show you. Go dig a little deeper. So I'm clicking on the AutoTag basics, and then we also have some subtopics under the main topic. So for the AutoTag basics, you can learn a little more about inserting a tag, the ForEach tag, and so on. When you click on one of these subtopics, it'll open up this window, which will give you the objective and also the procedure. The procedures to follow when inserting a tag. And the nice thing about this is we also provide a GIF to show you how to perform the step. So this step is how to open the AutoTag Manager ribbon. Pretty simple step, but we do show you GIFs. And we show you GIFs on all the steps as well. So again, this is a great second step. But when you're building your templates, you can always this tutor for step-by-step instructions on how to do something. Next recommendation in learning Report Designer is looking at the samples that we provide. So over here, again in the Getting Started Guide section, I'm going to click on this Samples button. And this is going to open up our Getting Started Guide. Here we have some step-by-step, some tutorials, and some sample templates. And that's what I like to focus on right now. So within this sample template, there's this additional section. And within there are some tag tutorials for SQL and XML. We will be including tag tutorials for JSON, as that's the third most used data source, but we're not fully there yet. SQL being the first, XML being the second. But for this webinar today, we're going to focus on the SQL data source. So for any tag that you can utilize in Report Designer, we have a sample for you. So over here is all the samples. We have samples for conditional formatting, ForEach tags, out tags, switch tags, and so on. Every tag that you can utilize, we have a sample here for you. I want to just click on this if tag to just show you what one of these will look like. So here, once the sample opens, you can see we provide you with step-by-step procedures on how to use the if tag, further instructions on how to use the else tag as well, and so on. The good thing about this, the really nice thing about this, is that it's connected to our Northwind SQL server database. So you can actually generate output from these SQL samples as well as the XML samples. So as you're going through this, you can actually generate the output from these samples so you can see the output as you go along. So this is a great next step for referencing the use of specific tags with examples of each. I'm going to close this. I'm going to skip back to the PowerPoint for a moment. Okay, that was the Auto Tag tab. Now, let's go over the one we were just looking at was the Auto Tag Manager tab. Now let's take a look at the Auto Tag tab. Here is where you'll actually create the template. We're going to create a very easy, simple template using some ForEach and out tags. I'll show you how to select the tag, how to pull your data in using the data bin. We'll go over inserting using the wizards for SQL and XPath. We'll show you how to create input parameters within the Auto Tag tab, and also how to generate output. These are the things that we'll be covering as we look at the Auto Tag tab. But for now, I'd like to give you just an overview of what a ForEach tag is. So a ForEach tag does three things. One, it fetches a set of data or the specific data that you want to utilize within your data source. Second, it can repeat that data through an iterative loop. For example, if you're trying to create a list. And third, it repeats the content between the beginning and ending for each tag. The ending for each tag just tells Report Designer when to stop repeating content with each iteration of the loop. The ForEach tag is a tag that you will use regularly. Though the most common tag is the out tag. The out tag is basically just short for output. So when you're trying to display data from your data source within your template, when you're ready to display a number, an image, or text, this is when you'll use the out tag. And tags are simply just placeholders for your data. The ForEach tag doesn't display information. It gathers the data that you want to use, loops through that data, and repeats the contents between the tags. The out tag actually displays the data that you want your users to see. All right, let's go back to Word and start creating a template. I'm going to open up another blank document. Okay, so the first thing to do when creating a template is to connect to your data. So within the Auto Tag Manager tab, I'm going to go over here to the Data Sources button and click it to open up the Connection Editor. Here, within this Connection Editor, you have a couple of sections. Active, which is currently empty, and also the Recent Inactive section. So these are all the data sources that I've connected to recently. They pretty much stay in here until you delete them. But this will give you a way to quickly, if you already made a connection, just connect to it again. But for this example, let's go ahead and create a new data source. So I'm going to go and click on this new tab. And when we're in the new tab, these are all the different data sources that we can connect to. We can connect SQL, web file, and apps. And within apps, there's the Salesforce. We can connect to within web file, the JSON data source, OData, XML, XPath 1 and 2, and also SQL data sources. There's a lot of SQL options here. And this is because I have a lot of drivers installed on my system to assist other customers with their templates. You can install different drivers as well, depending on the SQL environment that you're using. In our wiki, you can find step-by-step instructions on installing them and also obtaining the proper drivers. For today, I'm going to connect to the Northwind SQL Server database. So I'm going to go ahead and select this last option right here, SQL Server database. Now, when you do this, this section over here will change depending on the different type of connection credentials that need to be entered. First thing I always like to enter is the nickname. This helps you give an idea of what you're connecting to. So we're going to be connecting to the Northwind SQL database. So let's go ahead and give it a good descriptive name. So Northwind SQL. And when you're entering nicknames, there can't be any spaces in the nickname. Okay, next thing to do is enter in the server that you want to connect to. Today I'm going to connect to the MSSQL.windward.net server, and this server is open to the public. Instead of selecting the database that I'm going to connect to within the server right now, let's go over to the Credential Center and enter in the username and password to connect to this server. It is demo for the username and demo for the password. Again, this is open to the public, so anyone can access this. Over here, there's this display table and give you a different type of options. Hovering over any of these, you can see what the different for this example today, I'm going to stick with the user. To the right, there is this read in metadata. It's checked by default. There's only a few times that you don't want to pull in all the metadata from your database schema, but this is a great option to keep checked when you don't need to limit what's being pulled in. Okay, now that I have entered in my credentials for the server, let's go ahead and select the database that I want to utilize. So I can now, since I've entered in my password and username, I can go ahead and click on this drop down because I now have access to this server, and these are the databases that I can access. As I mentioned, we're going to be using the Northwind, so I'm just going to scroll down and select that. All right, so this is one way to set up the connection editor, to do it manually, enter in the server, database, and username credentials. Another way to enter it is if your DBA has provided you with a connection string, you can come in here and click that and paste your connection string in right there. But I'm going to be not going to be using the connection string today, so I'm just going to go with what I've had entered. Down beneath this is the root directory, and this is for using relative paths within your tags. So if you're referencing sub-templates or images that are on a shared network, you can provide the root directory for Report Designer to use to locate those sub-templates or images. Since I have this all set up the way I like, let's go ahead and test the connection. Can I actually connect to this database? I'm going to click this test button. And down here, I get a good message, data source test exceeded. That's what I want. So, yep, can connect to it. So now that I know it works, the connection, I'm going to go ahead and add this new connection. And when I do that, I now have my Northwind SQL database here in the active. So now I'm connected to this database. Okay, this is everything we need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and close this connection editor. And you may have noticed that auto tag data bin has popped up. So after connecting to a data source, Report Designer automatically shows your database schema over here on the right. And here's all the tables and the views that I can connect to based on the credentials that I have entered in the connection editor. Could also have stored procedures, but those are not going to be listed here in the data bin. They will only be listed in the data tree, which we'll see in a little bit. But these are all the tables and views that I have access to. So let's go ahead and create a basic table. I'm going to go up here to the Insert tab, select Table, and let's make this a 3x2 table. Okay, now I've connected to the database. I got the table. Now I need to use Report Designer to start tagging up my document. So for this example today, we're going to be looking at the categories table. So let me expand this just to show you what it contains. In this, there's 4 columns. There's the category ID, the category name, the description, and the picture. So that's the table we're going to be using. For our table to display, all we want today to be displayed is the category name. We'll display the description and also a picture to make this look a little more visually appealing. Okay, now that I have my header row set up here, I need to supply this table with data from the categories table. So what I'm going to do right now is place my cursor right under the category name column. Excuse me. Okay, sorry about that. I just placed my cursor under the category name column. And with my cursor there, let's go ahead and add a tag. So I'm going to go up here to the Auto Tag tab and over here and click on this Tags button. Now, these are all the tags that you can add to the template. We got alt tags, ForEach tag, switch tag, query tag, set tags. For today, we're going to add, for this first one, we're going to add the ForEach tag. And when you hover over the tag, gives you a short description. So ForEach tag is going to be an iterative loop. So I'm going to choose this. And wherever my cursor was is where the tag will be entered. So I'm going to go ahead and select this newly added ForEach tag. And I want to point out a couple things. Over here, there is this ForEach tag properties. So this will be an easy way to tell which tag you have selected. So I have selected the ForEach tag. So right up here, you see ForEach tag property. Now later, when we add alt tags to this template, if I was to select it, you would say alt tag properties. So this is a nice handy way to know that what you have selected is what you're looking at. So for this one, I'm looking at the ForEach tag properties. And within this properties section, there's a couple of things I want to point out. This variable and the nickname. By default, Auto Tag Report Designer provides you with a variable name. Currently, it's var name1. Let's go ahead and give this something to be a little more descriptive, since we're dealing with categories, let's call it var categories. And press enter. When I do that, it's going to ask me this, do I want to update all the tags that reference this? I only have one tag, so I'm going to go ahead and choose no. And so what this variable is this is the name that report designer uses to reference this specific tag. To actually make it easier for you to read the tag, you can use the nickname up here. So if you're asking someone else to look at the template, this could be a useful way for them to know what they're looking at. So currently this just says ForEach, but if we were to change this to something like categories to be more descriptive, then somebody else who comes in or you at a later time can always tell that this ForEach tag is for categories. A nice handy tool to make it user-friendly. Okay, now let's go ahead and select the data that we want to use for this categories ForEach tag. And there's a shortcut up here in the tag properties section to do that. And it's this data tree button. I'm going to click on it. When I do, it opens up the data tree. And here, somewhat like the data bin, you have access to your tables and views. But here is where you will be able to find your stored procedures. We're going to be using the categories table, so I could select something if I wanted to just loop through something specific, but since we're going to be displaying a lot of data, let's go ahead and grab the whole categories table. When I hover over this, it shows me that I'm bringing back, all the data within that table. Just to make sure that we are working with the right data, I'm going to go and click this preview button, just to ensure what's happening. And here gives you a preview of the data that's going to be returned. This just helps you make sure you're selecting the correct data. So here we're going to be ID, the category name, description, and picture. Yes, exactly what we want to use in our table up here. I use the preview button quite often to make sure I'm selecting the correct data that I want to see before generating the output. So you'll see me doing this quite a bit through this webinar, but this is also a practice that I have when reviewing templates. This helps you really see the data that you're working with. So the ForEach tag is getting the data that we want to utilize. Now to display the data, we need to use the alt tag. So I'm going to place my cursor right here to the right of the categories ForEach tag. I'll go up to the tags. I'm going to add an alt tag. Now that it's added, we need to select what data to be displayed in the alt tag. So I'm going to go back up here with it selected, click on the data tree pane, the data tree button, which opens the data tree. This time though, it looks a little different. By default, auto tag knows that we're referencing a ForEach tag. The var category is right here. So you'll see all the data within that ForEach tag. The options to select the tables and views and the stored procedures are collapsed by default, as you don't want to pull your data directly from your tables. If you did, you would just repeat the first record in the row, however, as many times as it loops through the data. So you want to reference your ForEach tag. So up here, I'm going to go ahead and for the first column, select the category name. And with that selected, let's go ahead and preview it just to ensure that we're bringing back the right data. So here you can see we're getting from the var categories, that ForEach loop, the category name. Beverages, condiments, confections, and so forth. Exactly what we wanted to show in this column. Okay, next, let's add an alt tag for the description. Put my cursor on that underneath the description name, click tag, choose out. Again, we need to select the data that we want to display. So I'm going to select that alt tag, go up to the data tree button, and this time select description, again, within the var categories. Lastly, we need an alt tag for the picture. Place my cursor in that column, go to tags, select out, and like the others, we need to display data. So let's go ahead and select it, data tree, and this time choose picture. All right, almost done setting up the table. Last thing we need to do is add the end for each tag. And again, the end for each tag just tells report designer when to stop looping through the content between the beginning and ending, all this content between this beginning and the ending for each tag. So whenever you add a table, you'll want to put the end for each tag here outside the table. It's logical to think that you'd put it right after the last alt tag, but in actuality, so you don't create a blank last row at the end of your list, you want to put it outside the table. So I have my cursor outside the table. I'll go to the tags, and I'm going to add the end for each. Again, this will just tell report designer when to stop looping through the data, when to stop displaying the category name, the description, and the picture. Cool thing about Report Designer is we support about 90% of Word's functionality. We don't support word art, so we don't suggest using it in your templates. Use input tags to bring in your images and logos. Since we're using Word, we can style the table any way we want. So I'm going to go ahead and select the table, and then up here in the Table Tools tab, go ahead and choose the design. So for this table today, I do want to have a header row. I do want my rows to be banded. I don't need a first column. And I also would like to have this colored a little bit. So let's make it green. All right, there it is. That's how easy it is to style the tables. So now let's go ahead and output this to see how it looks. So I'm going to go to Auto Tag. You could click this output button. I'm going to go ahead and select this drop down button right under it. And this is all the ways that you could output your data to generate a report. You can generate a docx, HTML, PDF. You can send it to the printer. You can create an RTF. PowerPoint, PPTX, and Excel, XLSX, grayed out. That's because they don't cross, output of that sort does not cross platforms. So if you wanted to output to Excel or PowerPoint, you would actually have to use those formats. The default is docx. So I'm going to go ahead and just select that. It's going to ask me, do I want to save my template? I'm going to say yes. So I'll save it to my desktop. All right, let's go ahead and compare the output to the template. So over here on the left is our template, and over here on the right is our output. I'm going to close the auto tag data bin. It's not needed anymore. All right, so here you can see we have the category name with all the different categories, the description, and the picture. Picture isn't showing the image on this one, not yet. It's just showing the raw data from the database. Now let me show you how to go ahead and correct that so we can display an image. And close the output. So I'm going to go over here to the picture alt tag, and I'm going to select it. And again, you can tell that I've selected an alt tag because of this alt tag properties. Within here, let's go ahead and format this. Oh no, I'm sorry. to display an image, we need to give it the type that we want to display. So I'm going to go ahead and select this type, and we have different type of options to display for the alt tag. You can display a date, a number, PDF, template. But for an image, we want to use bitmap, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. When you do that, it changes the alt tag to an icon, and you can also change the size of that as well. You can choose a specified height size, a specified height, specified width size. Now today I'm just going to go ahead and choose specified width. Okay, now that we've set this alt tag up to display an image by using the type bitmap, let's go ahead and preview this just to make sure we're returning what we like. Click preview. And yes, we are now displaying an image. Just what we want. So let's output this again just to make sure we're displaying the pictures. Yes to save. Split the screen. All right. Oh, got this a little bit backwards this time, sorry. Templates over here, and the output's over here on the left, and the template's on the right this time. But this time, as you can see, we are now displaying the pictures. Cool. So next thing I'd like to point out to you guys is that when you connect to a data source, you don't need to connect to just one. You can connect to multiple data sources at once, and they can also be of different types, XML, SQL, JSON. So let's just go ahead and add some text to this template just to give a good divider between the SQL table we just worked on and the next data source we will. So we're going to add an XML table now. All right, so as I said, we're going to add a second data source. So let's go back to the Auto Tag Manager tab, and let's go to add another data source. This time, when you look at the data sources, you might notice that there's a green circle. That just lets you know that you are currently connected to it. I'm going to still click on that to open it. And here you can see that we are connected actively to our Northwind SQL data source. But let's go ahead and create a new connection for XML. So I'm going to go ahead and select XPath 2.0. XPath 2.0 gives you the latest and greatest features compared to XPath 1.0. And like the SQL connection we did, first thing I'm going to do is set up a nickname. So let's go ahead and call this one Northwind XML. Make it a little descriptive so we know. And remember, there's no spaces. So now I can either come down here and type in the URL that where the data source is, or I can go ahead and click on the folder icon. And this allows, so when you install Report Designer, you get in your Documents folder this Auto Tag folder. And within this, you'll have some data and templates folder. These are a bunch of backups of auto tags that I've had before. You may not have these. I update my system quite often to assist other customers, so I have quite a bit of backups. But for right now, let's go ahead and just select this templates for the moment. I'm going to come over here and change this from XML files to all files. So we have tons of Word samples that get installed on your system when you install Report Designer. We have a little over 200 sample templates that do get installed, which we're cleaning up all the time. We also have Excel samples, Podify demo or pods templates, PowerPoint templates, bunch of different stuff. And these you can also get to by using the samples button in your Auto Tag Manager tab. So let's go ahead and go back to the Auto Tag tab. Let's change this back to XML files. Now let's go in the data folder. And these are the different XML data sources we can connect to. We're talking about connecting to the Northwind XML data source. So let's go ahead and select that. Let's go ahead and open it. So once selected, I could, if I wanted to, add a protocol here or add a schema. I'm not needing to do that today. So let's go ahead and test this to make sure I can connect. And down here, yep, data source test succeeded. So let's add this new one. And now you can see we have our Northwind SQL, which we were actively connected to before, and now we're actively connected to the Northwind XML data source as well. You can connect to as many data sources as you need. I've heard up to 9 XML data files being referenced, but we just need this one. So I'm going to go ahead and close this connection editor. And when I do this, you now notice that the data bin looks a little different. I still have my tables and views from my Northwind SQL connection, but now you'll see I have parent and child nodes from our Northwind XML data source. So there's another option to make things easier for you when setting up a template. Let's say you need all of the employee nodes within the employee parent node. What you can do is you can click on the employee parent node and drag it into the template. And when you drop it, it'll open up this window for you to select columns for your table. Well, today, for this example, we don't need all of these nodes, so I can go ahead and deselect them all. But we do want to use the last name, the first name, but we want it in a different order. So with those selected, I can come over here and click the order button and rearrange that. Also want to display a hire date and the country. So with just the specific columns that we want to display in our table, if I go ahead and click on the OK, Report Designer has just created the table for me. And this includes all the tags, ForEach Tag, out tags for each column, and also the end ForEach Tag. So to add a little space here, make it a little easier to read. Okay, so let's make sure that we're actually pulling the data that we want to see. So I'm going to go ahead and select this employees ForEach Tag and go up to Auto Tag and click Preview. And here, this preview is a lot different from the SQL preview. That's because we're dealing with XML nodes as opposed to table columns that are formatted in a specific way. But here you can see we have an employee node for Nancy, another one for Andrew, for Janet. So we have quite a bit of nodes that we are working with here. I think there's 9 of them or more. 9, it looks like. Okay, now let's just go ahead and preview the first name just to make sure we are returning getting the right information displayed. So here, first name, Nancy. So yep, we are getting the first name displayed here. Similar to the above table, let's go ahead and style this a little bit. Select the table, go to design. We do want a header and banded row for this. We don't want a first row column for that. And let's just go ahead and change the color. Let's make this one blue this time. All right. Again, easy to style. So let's go ahead and output this just to see what it'll look like. Auto tag output, yes to save. Okay, let's close the data bin. And this time, here's our first table, SQL table, as we saw it earlier. And now here's our first look at the XML table, which we created just by dragging and dropping. You may notice that the hire date isn't in a friendly format. This is the raw data from the XML file. Let me show you how to format that to make it a little more reader friendly. I'll go back to the template, select the hire date alt tag, and then again, we're on the alt tag. So I'm going to go up here and let's format the data this time. Similar to Excel, this screen, I'm going to select date, and let's give it a long date type format, something month, day, year. All right, let's go ahead and apply this, close it. And now let's preview it just to make sure we're returning the date in the format we want. And here, yes, we now have it displayed as month, day, year, just how we wanted it format. Awesome. Let's output this just to show. And here, now our date is in a little nicer fashion to read. I can expand the table to make it a little easier to see. Could have done that over here. How you set it up is how you output, but just want to show you now that the date is in the format that we wanted. Perfect. So that's how you just create tables with all the data that you're bringing back for the ForEach tag. But what if you want to provide filtering before you generate the output? You can do this using input parameters. Let me show you how that's done. Don't need to save that. So in this auto tag tab, off here to the left is the input parameters button. This is where I can define my parameter. So I want to go ahead and add a new one. And let's give it a name. Since we'll be adding the parameters to the category table, let's go ahead and call this category. Enter to save. And we can give it a default as well. So let's go ahead and enter in beverages. Okay. So the input parameter will always have a default. It will be starting off as beverages. And you can also give it a type. Right now it's text, but you could have the input parameter be currency, date, integer, number, select. And select just gives you a drop-down list that you can choose from, that you can choose the value from based on a query. For this example, we're going to go with text. So I'm going to go and select it. Once I have my input parameter set up how I want, let's save it. Okay, now that it's created, how do we utilize that input parameter to filter out data? So I'm going to go ahead and select this tag and then come up here to the tag properties, and I'm going to select this wizard button. When I click on that, it's going to open up the SQL wizard. Over here on the left side, the tables and views that I have access to. In this center section, columns, these are the values that's being returned that we're gathering for the ForEach tag, the category ID, category name, description, and picture. Below this is the sort section. So what if I want to sort my output by the category name? Well, you do that by going over here to the tables, finding what you want to sort by. Today, I'm going to be sorting by category name. So all you have to do is select it and drag it down to that section. Okay, and it's sorting currently A to Z. I'll expand this a little bit because over here on the right side, you'll see our data tree pane, data preview section. And this section is just to preview the data to show you that you're on the right track. So here, I set it to sort by category name, and here you can see the category names are increasing A to Z. We got our category ID, description, and picture. That just shows you what we're working with. Okay, so now that we have this sorted, I could, if I wanted to, sort it Z to A, and as I do that, you can see this is updated. So just change it back to A to Z for the moment. And beneath this is the filter section, or our SQL where clause. This is we're going to use this to filter out the data by using the input parameter that we just created. And to do that, you will go ahead and click here to add a group. And then click here to add a filter, because we want to filter. So we need to select for how we want to filter by. So I'm going to go in and click this select node. And we want to filter by category name. So I'm going to select that from our categories table. Double click it to select it. Okay, next, we can have this filter by category name if it equals, or we also give you other options, null, does not start with, does not contain, contains, start with. But for this example, we want to make it equal to. And then over here, we're going to set the value that we want to filter by. And to the right is this drop-down arrow. And now when I click that, these are all the parameters that I can choose from for filtering. So I'm going to go ahead and select category, double click it. And now the filter is all set up for me. And here over on the right, the data preview pane now, because we have the filter set up, is only displaying one record, beverages. And that's because that's the default that we've chosen. Down here, this is the where clause that we just created, where category name equals category. You can't edit this grade section. You update this in the tag editor when you want to update the select statement. We'll show you updating through the tag editor in the intermediate training. But I just want to show you that we are now dynamically adding this where clause for the categories input parameter. And you'll notice the $ squiggly bracket. This is how we define variables that you want to reference within Report Designer. And over here, we also have our order by, which we set up in the sort section. Kind of cool, because it helps you learn SQL statement syntax by just dragging and dropping certain fields. Now that we set up our input parameter to equal the category name within the category, let's go ahead and click OK. Now what happens when we generate the output? Let's go ahead and click output, yes to save. Now you'll see the variables prompt. There could be many variables, but right now I only have one, and it's set to beverages by default. We can go ahead and change this. Another option was confections. Now when I click output, this output for this top categories table is now only showing the confections record. Before we showed all categories, now we're only just showing the confection. So one way to filter. Sorry, I just noticed the time. It's 8:59. I got about 5 minutes left to go in this. Sorry, I'm running over a little late, but I do want to get this last section in for you guys. So we just showed you how to filter by using an input parameter. But what happens if you want to filter in some other way, maybe statically? How was that done? Well, let me show you. So we updated the categories table dynamically with input parameters by allowing it to change for each generation of the output. Let me show you now how to filter statically. So I'm going to go ahead and select the ForEach tag in our XML table. And I'm going to come up here and click on the wizard button. So this wizard button is a little different than what we saw a little while ago. This is the XPath wizard, and we're just showing you XPath. So that's almost why it's different. At the bottom, though, you'll still notice that our XPath is being generated dynamically, just like in SQL. But what if we want to add a sort or an order by? We do that by clicking this. Click here to add an order by. So what if I want to order by first name? Let's go ahead and choose that. Select OK. And over here on the right, you'll notice that the first record is Andrew Fuller. Andrew, the first name, and second record, Janet, and so forth. If we were to change this to descending, first record is now Stephen. Next is Robert. So we're now displaying the records in descending order. In XPath, you don't have the order by option. We give you the ability in Report Designer to order by. So now, as we're discussing, what if we want to filter statically? No matter how many times we output the XML data, we want to see those employees who are in a specific country, for example. To do that, we'll go ahead and click here to add a group. We'll go ahead and add the condition, the filter that we want to do. So I'm going to click here to add a condition. I need to select what I want to filter by. So I want to click here, select the node. And here I mentioned that we want to filter by country. So let's go ahead and select country to filter by. Then double click it or select it and click OK. Here, just like the SQL wizard, you could make it equal to, greater than, less than, contain, start with. We just want to make it equal to. And we need to set the value that we want to filter. So this time we're filtering statically. So let's just go ahead and enter in a value that we want to filter for. Country, let's go ahead and choose the UK. Okay, and once I do this, when I press enter, you'll notice down here in the XPath, it has been updated for us, where we're now going to be filtering those employees whose country equals UK, and we're going to display that by first name descending. So how this is how you set up the order by and the filter using the XPath wizard. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, since that's how we wanted it set up. Let's go ahead and output this now so I can show you what it looks like. Yes to save. So here we still have our input parameter for the first table we created, the SQL one. We went with confections last time. Let's go ahead and change it up. Let's choose seafood. When I click OK, two things. You'll notice that the first table, the top table, is now just only displaying that seafood record, but as well as the XML table is now only returning those employees from the UK, and that was all based on the static filter that we set up within the XPath wizard. So that's how you can filter your data, either dynamically, input parameters, or statically defining an actual value. All right. Let's go back to the slides, as I want to make sure we cover the topics listed in the slides. Okay, we went over the SQL and XPath wizards. I showed you how to sort dynamically and statically, and also how to ascend and descend the results. We discussed the input parameters, which allows you to add input just before generating output. Showed you how to add a default value, how to reference that parameter in a tag using the filter section, and the prompt that appears in the output. Okay, you may want to take a screenshot of this if you can while we're on this slide. Here are the resources that you can utilize. If you want to look up anything from our knowledge base, you can do this at our wiki.windward.net. We are constantly updating the wiki. We're actually revamping it presently. So you'll see a new wiki come out in the next If you can't find what you're looking for, you can always reach out to our amazing support team at support.windward.net, or you can also email them at support@windward.net. So if you have a question that you just can't find the answer to, please feel free. Go ahead and contact our support team, and we'll be happy to help you. If you want to retrieve your license key, you can do this at store.windward.net. And if you want any changes, if you want to see any changes or have any feature requests that you want added to the engine or report designer, you can do this at ideas.windward.net. Okay, next week, as I mentioned, we'll be having our intermediate training webinar. For this intermediate training webinar, we'll go over some advanced ForEach tags, advanced techniques for the ForEach tags, where we'll be setting up column-based instead of row-based. I'll show you how to show or hide specific things by either using the if-else tag or the switch case tags. I'll show you how to conditionally format your output. So maybe you want to just really illustrate or have text stand out. Say maybe you want to show something in red in output for something that's not meeting your requirements. I'll show you how to do that. And I'll show you some different menu items within Excel. Okay, there's going to be a short survey at the end of this webinar. Please feel free to fill it out truthfully. Any feedback that you can provide will help me and the attendees with the next webinar. I appreciate any feedback. Now let's go ahead and look at any questions that were asked we're now at the Q&A session. See one question that was asked. Let me just read that to get a good idea. Okay. Okay. The question was if I could just expand a little more on what pods are. I would really like to do that. Pods are a great feature that we offer. It allows you to, as I said before, if you've already set up a template and it has a header, footer, or common elements within that template that you use over and over again, you can use pods to capture those settings to be reused again very quick and very simple. May I show you a quick example of this? Let's go back to this category table. So with pods, I've already have mine loaded, but you can come up here and load them. You can load them globally or locally. I've had mine loaded globally already. So when you want to create a pod, I'll show you how easy it is and how useful this can be. So we've created two tables here, top SQL one, bottom XML one. Now say this is stuff that we use often and the templates that we design. So in order to make it easy for the next template designer, what we can do is we can go ahead and create a pod and we can reuse this that we've already set up over and over again easily. So with this selected, I'm going to go over here and create a pod. And here it tells me I've selected this and this is what the pod is going to be created with. There are other options, but right now since it's all selected, it knows that. I'm going to go ahead and give this a name, basic. I'm going to call this basic webinar. And here you can attach the pod to different pod files. I have a bunch of them set up on my system. You can also browse to one if it's not listed in this list right here, or you can add a new one. Pods will end in the RDLX extension. Let's go ahead and do the smart energy. You can also just give it a description if you wanted to, but I want to call this basic webinar. I'm going to add it to the smart energy pod file that I have set up and click OK. So over here on the right now we have my bottom one being new stuff, and this is what's in there now. I'll go ahead and click OK. That has collapsed, but when I expand on it, we'll now see this basic webinar pod that is set up. Also notice that there is the Northwind SQL and Northwind XML. As the tables that we have utilize those, the pods, when I created, also set up those databases for me so I can reuse it. But now that I have my pod set up, pod goes next. Let's go ahead and add what we created to the document. So all I'm going to do is select this, click and highlight it, drag it in, and drop it. And as I did that, there you go. Exactly what we set up above. We got the color formatting set up. When I generate output now, let's keep it seafood for the moment. And here, let's close the pods. Here, not only is the styling saved, but also the filters, the ordering, everything that is used to set up the tables or the things that I've highlighted when I created the pod is also applied when you're adding the pod to the template. So again, this could be very useful. You use the same header over and over again. This is a good way to save your designer time in setting that up. Thank you for bringing that question up. I really wanted to show you guys a little bit about pods. Okay, there's no other questions at this time. So I just want to say thank you all for joining. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Hopefully we'll see you, some of y'all, all of you guys in the intermediate training webinar. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and goodbye now. Thank you for joining.